The slap didn't come with a hand. It came with a voice. Sharp, public, don't touch that. You can't afford it. It echoed across the marble floors of RYNE, the city's most exclusive fashion boutique, a place where the perfume cost more than rent, and the salespeople smiled like they were auditioning for royalty. The target of the insult? A girl, barely 17, torn hoodie, calloused hands, eyes wide like she was inside a dream she knew wasn't hers. She'd reached out toward a navy wool blazer, her fingertips just grazing the sleeve. The saleswoman, blonde, armored in designer labels and perfect posture, had stepped between her and the rack like a museum guard. "We don't do browsers," she said, loud enough for the entire store to hear, especially not ones who don't belong. A few customers chuckled. Quiet, safe. The girl looked down, but she didn't move. By the entrance, a man wearing jeans and a worn baseball cap stepped inside. He had no entourage, no stylist, just a quiet presence that somehow made the lights feel a little less artificial. Keanu Reeves. He stood still, watching. No one noticed him yet, but he saw everything. The girl's hand dropped slowly. She didn't speak, didn't cry, just stare at the blazer as if it were a piece of her dignity now hanging from a silver hanger. The saleswoman smirked, still facing her like a guard dog in stilettos. "Let's not make this harder than it needs to be, sweetheart." Another customer, a man in a tailored tan coat, chuckled under his breath. Bold of her to even come in. Laughter followed. Tight, controlled, cruel. The girl backed away from the rack and turned to leave, still silent, still holding whatever pride hadn't been stripped from her. That's when Keanu moved. Still unnoticed, still calm. He walked past racks of $1,000 coats and glass cases of pretension until he reached the same display, the same blazer, the same saleswoman, now mid-gossip with another associate. She barely looked up until she saw him. A moment of silence. Then she blinked. "Mr. Reeves. We didn't realize." Keanu glanced at the girl, who had one foot outside the front door. Then he turned to the saleswoman. She was looking at this one. The saleswoman stiffened. "Yes, but—" "Perfect. I'll take it. For her." The room shifted. Eyes turned. The girl froze, halfway out the door. The saleswoman blinked again, trying to regain control. "Sir, you don't understand. She's not a customer. She came in off the street. We don't entertain." Keanu's voice was soft, measured. "You don't entertain people?" He let the question hang. The silence that followed was not empty. It was heavy. Then he called out gently, not loud, just enough. "Miss, what's your name?" She turned, slowly. "Amara." Keanu smiled. "Amara, you've got good taste." He held up the blazer. "It'll look better on you than on any mannequin in here." For a moment, no one moved. Then Amara slowly stepped back inside, not with confidence, but with caution, like someone who wasn't sure if the ground beneath her still wanted her there. Keanu held the blazer gently in both hands, as if it were something sacred, not stitched. He didn't hand it to the saleswoman. He handed it directly to Amara. "Go on. Try it." She hesitated, eyes wide, darting between him and the blonde associate whose face had soured into something bitter. I can't. I shouldn't." Keanu tilted his head. "You already did the hardest part. You walked in." That sentence landed harder than any slap. Amara took the blazer with trembling fingers. The fabric felt like silk and armor all at once. She slipped it on. The fit wasn't perfect, but it didn't matter, because when she turned toward the mirror, she stood straighter. Not because of the jacket, but because someone had finally seen her. Around the boutique, the silence deepened. The woman in the tan coat whispered to her friend, "Is this some kind of stunt?" Her friend shook her head, watching. "No, it's something else." Keanu looked at Amara in the mirror. "You look like someone who belongs exactly where she is." And for the first time that day, maybe that year, Amara believed it. The saleswoman spoke again, her voice tighter now. "Mr. Reeves, we can wrap that up for you if you'd like." Keanu turned, expression still soft but steel behind his eyes. No need. He pulled out his card, placed it gently on the counter, and added, "But I suggest you wrap up how you speak to people before someone else walks in that doesn't forgive as easily." Amara stood in front of the mirror, fingers brushing the lapels of the blazer. The fabric was heavier than she expected, but it made her feel grounded, anchored, like the floor beneath her wasn't just marble, but hers. Behind her, the store buzzed with the kind of energy that didn't know where to go. Embarrassed murmurs, curious glances. The saleswoman retreated behind the counter, biting the inside of her cheek, her perfect posture now a little more rigid than confident. Keanu stood beside Amara, still calm, still present. "Looks like it was made for you." She turned toward him slowly, eyes clearing. "I wasn't trying to buy it," she said. "I just want to know what it felt like. My mom used to work in places like this. As a cleaner, said one day I'd walk into a store and not be afraid." Her voice trembled, but I was, until now. Keanu didn't respond with a speech. He just looked at her with a respect so quiet, it roared. In the far corner, the manager emerged at last. Sharp suit, well-practiced smile, and panic buried under politeness. "Mr. Reeves, what a surprise. May I speak with you a moment?" Keanu didn't move. He spoke loud enough for the room to hear. "Is this how your team treats everyone who walks through the door? Or just the ones who look like they need kindness most?" The manager blinked. "There's been a misunderstanding." Amara turned toward him now, straighter, steadier. "No," she said. "You understood exactly who you thought I was." The silence returned. But this time, it was heavy with awareness. Keanu looked at the cashier, still holding the receipt, put it in a gift box. He turned to Amara. "Some things are meant to be worn with pride, but earned with courage." She swallowed hard. "Thank you. Don't thank me. Just promise you'll do the same for someone else one day." She nodded. Amara walked out of RYNE with a blazer folded carefully in a gift box, arms wrapped tightly around it, like she was carrying something sacred. Because she was. Not fabric. Dignity. Not sewn into the jacket, but stitched into the way someone had finally seen her. A few passers-by stared as she stepped onto the busy street. Not because of how she looked, but because of how she carried herself. Straighter, calmer, larger. Inside, the boutique buzzed in the wrong way now. The kind of tension money can't smooth over. The young employee who had stayed silent earlier turned to the saleswoman, the one who'd humiliated Amara. "You know you could have just let her touch it." The saleswoman scoffed. She didn't belong here. She does now. And with that, the young woman unpinned her name tag, set it on the glass counter, and walked out the same door. Outside, a photographer from a local lifestyle blog who'd passed by during the scene earlier posted a blurry shot of Amara in the blazer next to Keanu. He captioned it, didn't get the full story, but this felt like something real. Within hours, the photo spread. It wasn't just celebrity gossip. It was something else. A moment. Later that night, Amara sat home in her small apartment. Gift box still unopened on the bed beside her. Her mom walked in with tired feet and warm eyes. "What's that?" Amara smiled gently. A promise. And a reminder. At the bottom of the gift box, beneath the tissue paper, was a handwritten note. Simple. Sharp. From Keanu. "You don't have to shout to be heard. You just have to speak when no one else will." The next morning, the boutique's marble floors shone as brightly as ever. But the air was different. The photo of Amara and Keanu had gone viral overnight. Not because it was dramatic, not because it was staged, but because it was true. A man giving space. A girl holding her ground. And a moment that told 1,000 people, you are not invisible. The boutique's social media page was flooded. This the same store that humiliated a teenager? Keanu's class made your cruelty even louder. You sell clothes. He gave dignity. A few influencers who once flaunted their RYNE exclusives quietly deleted their tags because the luxury didn't shine quite the same anymore. Inside, the manager called an emergency staff meeting. His tone was polished, but tense. "We need to control the narrative. We'll release a statement. Apologize. and say it was a one-time misunderstanding. The young associate who had removed her name tag the night before happened to be there to pick up her final paycheck. She paused, turned back. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was exactly who we'd been trained to be. No one stopped her when she walked out again. Meanwhile, Keanu was gone. No interview, no tweet, no statement. Just gone. Because he didn't come for attention. He came for her. At a local high school the next day, Amara stood in front of her speech class. Same girl, but not the same presence. She wore the blazer now, not to impress, to remember. Everyone's asking why a celebrity gave me a jacket, she said. But that's not what happened. A stranger reminded me that sometimes the loudest truth walks in quietly and leaves before anyone can say thank you. The email came late, from the boutique's corporate office. Short, polite, careful. Dear Amara, we would be honored if you join us for a roundtable discussion on improving guest experience and inclusivity. We believe your voice could be illuminating. Amara read it twice, not because she didn't understand, but because for the first time they were asking her to speak, not leave. She didn't answer right away. She folded the message, sat with it. She wasn't looking for payback. But she'd never turned down a platform to speak the truth, especially on behalf of those still afraid to enter the room. 3 days later, she walked into RYNE again. Same marble floors, same scent of imported leather and rose oil. But this time, she didn't flinch. No hoodie, no hesitation. She wore the blazer, the one he gave her. She was led to the back, to a sleek glass-walled boardroom where executives in black suits sat with notepads, waiting, nervous smiles. Amara, we'd like to hear your perspective. She looked around, then calmly took a seat at the head of the table. You want to know how to fix this place? They nodded. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't lean forward. She simply said, start by looking at who you greet and who you ignore. She told them everything about the tone, the glances, the door that felt more like a wall than a welcome. She didn't sugarcoat it. But she didn't shame either. She educated, with grace sharper than any designer cut. By the end of the meeting, 2 associates had tears in their eyes. The head of PR said nothing, just closed her notebook, and finally listened. As Amara stood to leave, the manager, the one who had tried to control the narrative, approached. You're a powerful young woman. Amara turned, looked him in the eye. I always was. You just see it now. The elevator ride down was quiet, not awkward, reverent. The boutique's regional director stood beside Amara, clasping a slim portfolio. At the ground floor, just before the door slid open, she spoke. We'd like to offer you a position. Amara blinked. Doing what? Guest relations, community engagement, maybe more. You'd help us rebuild how we train, how we serve, who we see. She hesitated. And if I say no? The woman smiled, honestly. Then we keep trying anyway. But without the person who helped us understand why we must. Amara exhaled. It wasn't about the title or the pay. It was about the mirror, the one the store had been forced to look into and see who it really was. Outside, a delivery van paused near the curb. From it, 2 men unloaded a tall display case wrapped in velvet. The manager rushed forward. That's not supposed to be installed until next week. The lead installer checked his clipboard. Says here it's urgent. Paid for anonymously. They peeled back the velvet. Inside the glass was a blazer, a single folded receipt, and a small brass plaque. It read, sometimes the most valuable thing in a store is the way someone was treated. Kjar. Word spread quickly. Photos of the display hit social media again. But this time, it wasn't about outrage. It was about transformation. People began to show up just to see the plaque, to read it, to feel something real inside a place once built on surface. Amara stood at the edge of the display that evening, watching silently. Beside her, the young associate who had quit weeks before reappeared. Back already? Amara smiled. Back for good. It was a rainy afternoon, the kind where the city moved slower. Puddles reflected luxury storefronts, and umbrellas bobbed like moving shadows. Inside RAYNE, the store was calm. Customers browsed. Music played low. Staff smiled, not with polished scripts, but with sincerity. Near the display case, a family stood reading the plaque. The mother turned to her teenage daughter and said, "You should remember that." The girl nodded. She already had. Across the boutique, a man stood near the back. Dark hoodie, ball cap, hands in his pockets. No entourage. No spotlight. Keanu Reeves. He didn't walk up to anyone. Didn't ask to speak to a manager. Didn't browse. He just watched. The staff noticed. But no one disturbed him, because by now they understood some people don't enter to be seen. They enter to see what you become. Amara was in the fitting area helping a nervous young customer, a girl not unlike herself from a month ago. "It's okay," she whispered. "You don't have to buy it. Just try it." Sometimes knowing what dignity feels like is more important than what it costs. The girl smiled. Amara handed her a blazer, not the same one, but close, a symbol. And then, through the mirror, she caught a glimpse of him. Keanu. She stepped out slowly, heart fluttering not from nerves, but from recognition. He was still by the display case, looking at the plaque, reading the words he never signed, but that only he could have written. She approached him. He turned before she spoke. "You came back," she said. Keanu nodded once. "Didn't think I needed to, but someone told me once. You don't have to shout to be heard." She smiled. "You didn't, but now a lot of people are finally listening." He looked around, at the staff, the display, the open doors, then back at her. "Then you don't need me here anymore." Amara tilted her head. "Maybe not, but I'm glad you saw what you started." He nodded again, tipped his cap, and without a photo, a signature, or a scene, Keanu Reeves turned and quietly walked out, because the moment was never about him. It was about what happens after someone like him leaves. The event was called Future Faces of Fashion, an annual gathering of brand directors, marketing heads, and luxury executives in a hall filled with polished wood, velvet seating, and egos in custom tailoring. Amara had been invited as a special guest. No one expected much. A few thought it was symbolic, a PR stunt, the girl from a viral story. The blazer thing, right? Right. But then the lights dimmed, and Amara stepped onto the stage. No teleprompter, no cue cards, just her, in the same blazer that once made her feel like she didn't belong, now worn like armor woven from memory. She walked up to the mic, took a breath, and began. "A few weeks ago, I was humiliated in a store that promised beauty but sold exclusion. I wasn't angry that I couldn't afford anything. I was angry that I was treated like I wasn't even allowed to try." The room quieted, but someone saw me, not with pity, not as a statement, just as a person who deserved to be in the room. She paused. That person didn't write a review, didn't film a confrontation. He just gave me the space to stand and didn't flinch when I took it. Now every eye was locked on her. There's a plaque in that boutique now. It says, "The most valuable thing in a store is how someone was treated." But let me tell you what it doesn't say. She leaned forward. That plaque was paid for by someone who never said his name. Someone who walked away before anyone could thank him. Silence. Then a single hand clapped. Then another. And then the room, full of power and polish, stood to its feet. Later, after the applause faded, a creative director from a major label approached her. "You just said more with one story than we've said in 5 campaigns." Amara nodded. "Then maybe start hiring people who live the story before they sell it." The envelope arrived on a Thursday. No return address. No sender's name. Just a single ivory envelope, slipped under the boutique's office door. Amara found it while closing up. The store quiet, the street outside glowing gold in the early evening light. She paused, looked around. No cameras. No signature scent of drama. Just paper. She opened it gently. Inside was a small card. No logos. No pretense. Just a single line, handwritten in dark ink. "You turned a moment into a mirror." No signature. But she knew. It didn't need one. She sat down behind the register, closed her eyes for a second, because that line didn't come from someone needing credit. It came from someone who saw her before the world decided she was worth seeing. Later that night, Amara framed the card and placed it beneath the plaque at the boutique's display case. No announcement, no explanation, just a quiet addition. Now the brass plate read, "Sometimes the most valuable thing in a store is how someone was treated. You turn a moment into a mirror." K. And people noticed. Customers began stopping by just to read the card. Teens took photos of it like scripture. Parents pointed it out to their kids. And for once, a store known for labels had become a place known for meaning. Back at her apartment, Amara looked in the mirror, not at the blazer, not at the reflection, but at the eyes of someone who no longer questioned where she belonged. "Tomorrow," she whispered, "someone else walks in scared. And I'll be ready." It was a slow Tuesday afternoon. A drizzle tapped against the boutique's windows, the kind of rain that made time feel softer. Amara was folding scarves near the front when the door chimed. A girl stepped in, maybe 15, maybe 16, hair damp from the weather, oversized hoodie, eyes scanning the racks like they were written in another language. Amara knew that look, not of someone shopping, but someone measuring how invisible they were allowed to be. She approached gently. "First time here." The girl nodded, trying to smile. "Yeah, just looking." "Good," Amara said. "That's what mirrors are for." She paused. "Want to try something?" The girl hesitated, then whispered, "I don't think I can afford any of it." Amara smiled, reached behind the counter, and pulled out a carefully folded blazer. The blazer. "Try this one. No price tag. Just promise me something." The girl's hand shook as she slipped it on. Perfect fit. Her eyes widened. Her shoulders straightened, just like Amara's once had. "What's the promise?" she asked. Amara looked at her, voice warm but clear. "That one day, when you see someone feeling how you feel right now, you won't wait for permission to show them they matter." The girl nodded. "It feels powerful." Amara nodded back. "That's because it is." She stepped back as the girl turned toward the mirror, and in that reflection stood not just a girl wearing a blazer, but a beginning. Amara folded the receipt by hand and placed it in a small envelope. No total, no logo, just a note inside. It was never about the clothes. "Hey." And later that evening, when the boutique lights dimmed and Amara locked up for the night, she paused by the plaque one last time, brushed her hand across the frame, and whispered, "Thank you for sitting with me when no one else did." Then she turned off the lights and stepped into the world she no longer had to prove herself to.